Hey, Alan Rowland again. In recent presentations that I've delivered to you, I've tried to make a reference to some of the early founding fathers of Walker County and Jasper, Alabama. The last presentation I dealt with Franklin Ashbury Gamble, and one before that we talked about the Bankhead family. But today I want to talk to you about another family, a prominent family in Jasper, and we get an interesting little link here later in the presentation. But let's go to our documents camera here, and we have the Musgrove family. And this is a Musgrove family from Jasper, Alabama. Walker County was founded by John W. Walker in 1923. If you go downtown Jasper, you can see the historical marker there that references that very event there. All righty, now, before we go any further with this, I'd like to present to you the family tree, and I drafted this family tree, so you may have a little bit of difficulty in reading this, and it's with the Bankhead family. And I only put in some of the key figures here, not that anybody has any lesser importance, but where we're going to start up here is right at the top here, and it shows you William Trapnell Musgrove. You can read the dates here, 1765 to 1842, and he was married to Nancy Tate Musgrove, and that's not so important for us, but if we go down a line here, we get to Edward Gordon Musgrove. You can read the dates there. He married Rachel Ann Hicklin, and you can see down below this their children, and they did have 5 children. This is Bushrod. You can't read that. I just moved it out of the way. Bushrod. And then we have Lewis Musgrove here, Francis Ashbury, which I'm going to spend quite a bit of time with. Then we had Lenora Jane here, and Martha, who is over here. So I try to bring this family tree back before we get through, because we still have a lot to cover with that. All right, so let's go back to, oh, and by the way, much of what I give to you today, before I forget it, and because I want to give reference here to the history of Walker County, John Martin Domhart. I spent a lot of time with this book. I've spent a lot of time with it in the past. I've read it cover to cover many, many times, and it covers the early history of Walker County. Unfortunately, it ends around the early 1930s, so you're going to have to pick the remainder of the history of Jasper and Walker County up, through your own devices with that. Alrighty, but let's continue on with this. I want to pick up our discussion here with Dr. Edward Musgrove, Gordon Musgrove. You can read the dates here of his life, 1795, 1850. I do not have a photograph of him. And notice here he's a physician now. And so he moved from Newberry County, South Carolina, and moved to Blount County in 1822. And stayed in Blount County, Alabama, for about a year until he came to Walker County in 1823. Remember, that is the year that Walker County was founded, so it's a brand new community here. And a wealthy individual here. He donated land for the courthouse. All of that downtown area of Jasper that you recognize today, that was donated through the efforts here of Ed Musgrove, Dr. Edward Gordon Musgrove. Here is a likeness of the county courthouse. That is today. That is not the county courthouse that it was built in 1823. But that's what it looks like today. But we can thank Dr. Musgrove for that. Notice here he was a physician, he was a judge, he was a preacher, a combination covering all the bases with that. He was a member of the First Methodist Church. First Methodist Church was actually not known as the First Methodist Church in 1926, and it was really known as a Methodist Episcopal Church. If you go to the First Methodist Church in downtown Jasper today, you can see the old cornerstone there. That's kind of interesting. My eyes are too poor. I just cannot read the dates on that, but perhaps you can identify that. But that comes from one of the early Methodist churches there. First church that was built in 1826 was a wooden, a log church, and then it was built again and rebuilt in 1858, and that was a brick church, stone church is my understanding of it. Alrighty, so let's move along here, and let's see here. I told you a few seconds ago that they had 4 children, and so let me go back to my documents camera here, and these are the let's get myself together here, and where I want to go here all right, is right to, getting lost in reading this upside down, is to this area right here. All right, Frances Asbury Musgrove. And Frances Asbury Musgrove was married to Elizabeth Kane. You can read the dates here, and you'll see this again in just a second here. They would have 4 children. I'll show you photographs of some of them in just a few minutes here. One here is Judge Coleman. They called him Bud Musgrove. One will spend quite a bit of time with Lycurgus Breckenridge. They call him, sometimes people call him Buck Musgrove. This lady over here, a lot of time with her today. Missouri, they called her Zoo Musgrove Long. And then we had Calpurnia, and Calpurnia here, they refer to as Perny, Rachel Musgrove. And notice a lot of familiar names if you're familiar with the Musgroves, or another family that we'll talk about in just a little bit. So let me take this off here. And I want to go to one of their children, and one of the most prominent ones here, Frances Asbury Musgrove. Now, you may remember, if you watched my previous presentation on Franklin Asbury Musgrove, you see Asbury. Now, Asbury was a popular name in the 19th century. There was a very, very popular Methodist Episcopal minister named Francis Asbury. He was actually an Englishman, but and a lot of individuals of that time, quite religious, would name their children after Asbury, and particularly Francis Asbury. And that's what we see here, Francis Asbury Musgrove. You can read the dates of his life there from 1827 to 1865. In Jasper itself, businessman, a coal mine owner at Bull Bottom, that's down near Cane Creek. When the American Civil War broke out, he was instrumental in establishing Company L of the 28th Alabama Infantry, and he became a captain in that company. They fought in the battle at Murfreesboro in 1862. Some people call that Battle of Stones River, nevertheless here, and was severely wounded there, and his injuries were just so incapacitating that he was ordered home and given the responsibility to recruit in the Walker County, Jasper area. He organized 2 battalions. One of these battalions went to Virginia and served in Virginia and in Georgia. I don't know this for sure, and it's difficult to research this because we don't know exactly what battalion it was, but I suspect it was a battalion that was placed under command of General James Longstreet. They did fight in Virginia and in Georgia. The other battalion that Francis Musgrove established was known as Musgrove's Battalion. It served under General Nathan Bedford Forrest. I've done some research on this. I've got a number of books about Nathan Bedford Forrest, and I can find no mention whatsoever of Musgrove's Battalion. So they must have had a very, very light role in that. One individual described Francis Asbury Gamble, and this was a Judge A.A. Coleman, described him as one of the most handsomest men that I have ever seen. Well, okay, that's pretty nice to say about somebody. All right. Now, he was married. Francis Asbury Gamble was married to Elizabeth Kane Musgrove. You read the dates here. If you spend any time studying the history of Jasper, particularly on the women side of it, you recognize this name. She is a very, very popular individual in the Jasper community. Anyway, let's see if I have a photograph of it. I do. And I don't have a photograph of Francis Asbury Gamble, incidentally, but he is buried in the old Memorial Cemetery above Jasper. This is by the Presbyterian Church, the First Baptist Church, and that's his repaired, if you will, burial stone there. And anyway, that's where he lies in rest. Now, for Elizabeth Kane Musgrove, bear in mind these are old photographs, my friends. This goes back, into the 19th century, so the quality is not very good here. Here's another photograph of Elizabeth Kane Musgrove. A wonderful, wonderful lady. They had 4 children, one who was Judd, and Judge Coleman. They called him Bud Musgrove. Now, Judge is not a title. That is his name. You can read his dates of his life right there. He died at 44 years of age. If you want to read deeper on that, it was a sad, sad ending to his life. This is what he looks like. Now, if you go to Oak Hill Cemetery today and you're looking for his burial site, it will say J.C. Musgrove. J.C. Musgrove will not have Bud on there. Now, they also had Elizabeth Kane Musgrove, Francis Asbury Musgrove had another son, Lycurgus Breckenridge Musgrove. He went by a variety of names. I'll tell you those in just a few minutes here. You read the dates of his life here, 1857, 1931. This is what he looked like. I'll tell you later that he never married, but he has such an instrumental role in the history of Jasper. Another lady, I do not have a photograph of her. Her name was Missouri. They called her Zoo Musgrove Long. You read the dates of her life there. And as I said a few minutes ago, we had Calpurnia. They called her Perny, Rachel Musgrove. Now, for Elizabeth Kane Musgrove, wonderful lady, she helped in establishing the Confederate Monument, downtown Jasper. That's a high monument there. I think it was dedicated, I forget exactly when it is. I'll embarrass myself. I believe it was 1907. And she is buried in the Bankhead section at Oak Hill Cemetery, along with a majority of these other individuals that are the Musgroves. All right. I wrote there, I'm sorry, buried in the Bankhead section, buried in the Musgrove section. I still have the Bankheads on my mind. Now, the next individual I wish to get into here, another quite fascinating individual, Lycurgus Breckenridge Musgrove. You translate that name, Lycurgus, it actually means the king. And in some ways, he's very much like that. You can read the dates of his life there. Some people refer to him as LB. Some people called him Breck. And for whatever reason, many people called him Colonel. I think that was just kind of characteristic of the 19th century and early 20th century anyway. I can never find any documentation whatsoever that indicated that he served in the military. So that's probably just a little sobriquet, so to speak, that is attached to him. As I mentioned earlier, never married. Donated land, a quite wealthy individual, donated land for refurbishing the Methodist Church, First Methodist Church in Jasper, Presbyterian Church, also the Episcopal Church. I don't think that's the Episcopal Church. It's down by the old Community Health Center, the old one anyway. At the First Methodist Church, and I know you're probably familiar with it if you live locally anyway, this is what it looks like here. And the original architecture was supposed to be of red brick. And Lycurgus Breckenridge Musgrove just insisted that no, it does not need to be that traditional red brick. We need to have this fine Georgia marble. And he paid huge contributions in helping to support the building of that church and what it appears as today. Today, if you go there, you'll see a historical marker right outside the church, First Methodist Church. It tells you all the details of what I just gave a few minutes ago about the contributions of Lycurgus Breckenridge Musgrove. All right. Now, he also personally paid $10,000 for the creation of this stained glass dome, and this is what it looks like here. This was in honor of his mother, Elizabeth Kane Musgrove. Now, I want you to think, $10,000 over 100 years ago, so that was quite expensive with that. And he always insisted that in honor of his mother, every Easter, that the sanctuary would be filled with Easter lilies. And that's pretty much the way it is today, is my understanding of it. All right, let's see what else here. He also built Musgrove Country Club. This was his personal dwelling. So he didn't have a personal home until he built the country club. And, of course, it was built as a lodge, but that was his personal dwelling there. And I think that's rather remarkable. Let's see if I have a photograph of it. And I apologize, I don't have a good one. This is an old historic photograph of Musgrove Country Club here, and I probably should have driven out and got a current photograph, but I did not do so. But that's what it looked like. All right, so on we go with this. Now, he purchased a Daily Mountain Eagle, and this was owned by Franklin Asbury Gamble, and he purchased this. And, for really political and business reasons, he owned Jasper Land Company, which in 1880 had 4,000 acres. He owned coal mines at Corona and Patton. Maybe you've seen that in an earlier presentation I've given about the coal mining strikes in the 1920s. He donated 5 acres of land on Academy Hill in 1909 for the creation of, I wrote it here as Jasper Academy. It was actually to replace the old Jasper Academy that had gone into disuse there. And so this was on Academy Hill. You probably know where I'm talking about in Jasper. And they had the old Walker County High School was there until it burned, and I think it was in 1916 anyway. So that's kind of an interesting place to wander around, but I don't recommend that you do that today because that is a private dwelling there today. He ran unsuccessfully for the United States Senate in 1926. He lost this race to Hugo Black and to others. He ran for the United States presidency in 1924 as a prohibitionist. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, prohibitionist is a person that is anti-alcohol. He was part of the American Anti-Saloon Society. I think he was a chairperson of that. And, of course, Calvin Coolidge won that presidential election in 1924, which I find this to be such an irony there, is that we have Musgrove Country Club today, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I'm not a member of Musgrove Country Club. My parents were, and during my teenage years, I spent quite a bit of time there, but I just don't find that to be something that's necessary in my life today. But what I find to be so amusing is that Musgrove Country Club, which was the dwelling of this drinker, this prohibitionist, Lycurgus Breckinridge Musgrove, he's probably doing triple backflips in his grave today, knowing that the alcohol had his home and is now flowing like the Blackwater Creek that is adjacent to the Musgrove Country Club today. That's probably an unconsane thing to say, but anyway, it is the truth here. Alrighty, and I found this rather amusing too, and I get conflicting stories on it, and I changed my writing here. When I first wrote this, I read an article that it took place at Baton Rouge in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and then later I read another article that conflicted with that, and so I'll try to take this side of it, that it was at New York at the Marlborough Hotel there. He was entertaining guests, and remember that Musgrove is from Alabama, so he entertained guests with a meal of candied yams, Alabama black beans, vintage champagne. I thought he was a prohibitionist. And he had 10 possums that were sent up to New York or Baton Rouge, wherever it was, and were used by his personal chef in preparing the meal. Now, that story was told to me by Winfred Sandlin, who was a history professor at Walker College, and I've also seen it in some of his writings. So I like that, too. All righty, so let's move away from Lycurgus Breckinridge Musgrove. I tell you what here, I did have a photograph, and I failed to mention this to you. After the old high school burned in 1916, then Lycurgus Breckinridge Musgrove donated 46 acres of land, I believe it was anyway, 47 acres of land, to construct a new Walker County High School, which of course is on Highland Avenue today. This is a section of the photograph of a section of the front part of the old high school. This is where I went to high school anyway, and of course I graduated in 1967. You still had the old section that was there. It is not present there today. All right, so anyway, quite a magnificent individual there. Now, his sister is Missouri Sue Musgrove Long. You can read the dates for her life right there. And notice there we get a change of name here. She's obviously female. She went by the name of Sue, but she married a Long. In fact, she married John Benjamin Long. So this ties in another prominent Walker County family, the Long family. So we're going to spend some time with this. John Benjamin Long, you can read the dates of his life right there. His father is Captain Benjamin McFarland Long, who was a captain in the Mexican War, Mexican-American War. In fact, he was stationed for a period of time in Cordova, Mexico, and he liked it so much that when he returned to the United States, he helped in establishing the community of Cordova. Former name it was known as Dent, but they had to change the name. They did change the name to Cordova. The home there that John Benjamin Long had is the old Long House, which is located in Cordova. You can visit there today if you wish to do so. All right. He also established the old Long home. This was Captain Benjamin McFarland Long, the old Long home. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Been talking too much here, which was located on 2nd Avenue in Jasper, Alabama. This house is no longer there. I can remember it very well when I went to school down at Central Elementary and Central Junior High School. and we would always kind of admire that house. And it burned, I think it was in the 1960s, 1970s, and that was a loss for our community there. Okay, so anyway, she had a son. The son was Francis Musgrove. They called him Bud Long. You can read the dates of his life right there, 1882, 1932. He married Ida Stella Long. So she was Ida Stella Long, and then she became, she married into a Long too. They had a son, John Whitfield Long. 1904 to 1954, he married Emily Winsett Long. If you know the Long family today, you see all these names there: Whit, Winslet, Rachel, all of those names, which go back for generations there. And their children, and this gets into my generation here, John Whitfield Long Jr., 1940 to 2013. William Breckenridge, Bud Long, I knew Bud Long very, very well, 1943, and he just passed away just last month in August of 2024. And we're going to all miss him. A benefactor of Walker College, too. Stella Catherine, they called her Kit Long, I can remember her, and she was a few years older than me, but I can remember her. Sharing some photographs with you now. This is John Whitfield Long. I think it is, anyway. That is John Whitfield Long with Emily Winslet Long, and I believe I'm right on that. Some of the other photographs here, and we're going to go up to the Bankhead, I keep calling it Bankhead Cemetery for one crazy reason, but we're going to go to Oak Hill Cemetery, to where the Musgrove burial plot is. This is what it looks like here, a nice monument. It's a history lesson right before your very eyes if you go there today. And not very far, about 1 block distance away from the Bankhead plot there. Here's another likeness here showing you like a cornerstone for the Musgroves. Go up there if you wish to do so. It's a nice cemetery. Here's the burial marker here for Dr. Edward Gordon Musgrove, one of the early founders of Jasper and Walker County here. And by the way, I hate to take it away and put it back here. His wife Rachel is buried right next to him, so the two of them are right side by side. It's very difficult to read the inscriptions on the grave markers here. Elizabeth Kane Musgrove that we talked about earlier, wonderful lady here. She lies and rests there. Here's Lycurgus Breckenridge Musgrove. They called him the Colonel, L.B. Musgrove. Here's Bud Musgrove. This is J.C. Judd Coleman Bud Musgrove, died at the age of 44. Here's Calpurnia Rachel, known as Pernia. She's buried. They're all side by side, just side by side. And many of them just husband and wife. Here's Missouri Zoo Musgrove. And right behind her is the monument here for John Benjamin Long. So this gets into the Long section, the Long family section here. Here's John Musgrove, Buck Long. Francis Musgrove, Bud Long. And we have Ida Stella Long. All right. John Whitfield Long, Sr. and his wife, Emily Winslet Long. All right. Just wonderful figures in Jasper history. Kate Wallace Winslet, who was the mother of Emily, and then John Whitfield Long Jr., who died in 2013. So anyway, that wraps up our presentation here, of the Musgrove family. And as it turned out, we got into the Long family too, which is a fine tradition of early Jasper leaders there. All right, I hope you enjoyed these presentations here, and I look forward to presenting some more to you. Thank you.